Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Business Insights room. Every Thursday, Tim Sullivan and I, Mai Matsuoka, lead a discussion looking for insights, developments, and new opportunities for the business in Japan. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the discussions on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region.
So, good morning and welcome to everybody who is currently in the room. We expect more people to join soon. Today, we have a very special guest, but before that, let me tell you that this is Japan Expert Insights Thursday morning room with Timothy Sullivan and me, Maya Matsuoka, as your hosts and moderators. So, on this beautiful Thursday morning, we are pleased to welcome Heidi Carino, a member of the foreign community in Japan, who many of you may have already met, either virtually or in person. Heidi is a freelance Japanese to English translator, and last year she established her new freelance brand, which is called Kotonoha Bloom, to focus on transcreation, a specialist translation technique which is used to adapt content for marketing and copy. I believe that we will touch upon this as well, but today we're going to talk about finding and building your own community as a parent, as a professional, and as a global person. So Heidi will share her experiences here, and after Heidi finishes talking about her experiences, please let us know that you can join us and we'll bring you up on stage. Heidi.
So first, I think I'm just going to do a quick summary of why I came to Japan and what I'm doing now, and then talk a little bit about what community means to me and what kind of communities I've been a part of. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about why and how I came to Japan. I came to Japan in 1998. I followed my then boyfriend, now husband here, when he finished his studies in the UK. And when I got here, I realized not being able to speak Japanese and also not having graduated from university made me completely unemployable. I mean, there were lots of jobs for English teachers, but if you hadn't graduated university, nobody was giving you a job. So the next year I enrolled at ICU, which is also Tim's University. And because my only purpose was to get a degree, I chose a subject that I needed, which was Japanese, and a subject that I loved, which was English literature. I didn't have any plans on becoming a translator or anything, but I guess this combination, now looking back, was a really great combination because obviously English literature is all about expression and writing, and Japanese is, well, yeah, I mean, you need Japanese to be a Japanese to English translator. And then while I was at university, one of my part-time jobs was transcribing lyrics for CDs. A lot of the CDs at that time that were brought into Japan didn't have lyrics with them. And there was this job where I would listen to music and I would type up the lyrics. And then a Japanese translator would create a translation of that to go as an accompaniment with the CD. So it wasn't meant for singing. It was just to kind of explain the lyrics. And as I was doing that, the person I was working with asked me if I would provide what I call is an interpretive translation. We call it a shitayaku. So it's like a draft translation in Japanese. And that's how my translation career started. So I would take an English song and I would write what it meant, kind of like interpreting poetry, you could say, and draft that up in Japanese and then send it off to my colleague. And then he would make that into a lyric that could be used in CDs. And that started a 20-year partnership. I still actually work with him now, but it developed from translating English songs into Japanese to doing artist interviews and interpreting. And then recently I actually wrote a Japanese liner note for a CD. So it was a mix of Japanese to English translation, English to Japanese translation, English writing, and Japanese writing. And then in 2016, I went in-house at the biggest theme park in Japan. Who's I'm not really allowed to say the name, but it's on my LinkedIn profile, so you can check it out if you're in any doubts where it was. And I was working there as a copywriter / translator. And it was during my time there that I began to think about community for one, but also transcreation. As Maya said, transcreation is a type of translation which is used in marketing content, so like web pages, blogs, social media, and also for ad copy, so advertising and all those kind of things. And it's different from translation because it thinks about the target. And the example I always use is if you translate a Japanese website into English, you end up with an English website that is targeting a Japanese audience. Sometimes that doesn't make a difference, but a lot of the times it does. You need an English website that targets an English audience, and that's what transcreation is. And when I was working at this theme park, I began to realize how important it is to think about your target audience and adjust your language when you're adapting the copy. So when I left there in 2020, I took some time off to study content marketing and marketing strategy, copywriting, and also translation in general. And then last year in September, I launched my brand. So it's not a company, I call it a brand, which is Kotonaha Bloom. And I launched that brand because I do still do translation, and I still work with the guy who gave me my first job back in 2002. And I love those jobs too. But I wanted to do something which was specialized in transcreation, to be able to offer a service which was distinctly different to translation, which is why I set up the brand Kotonaha Bloom. And since then, I've been really active on LinkedIn and other social media, trying to promote my services, which is another community that I've discovered recently. So that's pretty much why I came to Japan and what I'm doing now. Before I go on to talk about communities, did you want to say anything, Maya or Tim?
Oh, I can listen to you forever. So no, please continue.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to talk about communities. This was a subject that I thought about last week when Anthony was on the show, and there were a few guests who were talking about how difficult it was to connect with a lot of Japanese people because the culture is so different, and the way we approach things and the way we communicate in the West is really different to Japan. And I would agree with that. But as I was listening, I realized that being part of communities, and when I say a community, what I mean is a group of people who are connected by a similar goal, and they have a similar value, a similar way they want to achieve that goal. So I'm not talking about millions of people. It could be just a bunch of 5 or 6 people, or it could be millions of people. But having those communities has been really important in helping me kind of find my place in Japan, but also more recently as a professional. My whole life until I had kids, I didn't really mix with other people. I was pretty happy working on my own in my house, listening to music, translating lyrics, occasionally talking to musicians over the internet, and basically not going out to meet anybody. But then when I had my first daughter back in 2007, I realized that this was something that I just had absolutely no idea what I was doing. But at the same time, I had very strong ideas about how I wanted to raise my child and what I felt that she needed. And I would, the internet was around then. So I would look on the internet to see if there were other people who had like similar ways of thinking as me. And I tried to find places in Japan where there was a more kind of play-centered way of raising children rather than putting them, straight into kindergarten where they'd have to learn their ABCs or their, katakana and hiragana from age 4. And I couldn't really find anywhere. So I would just kind of go to the park and let my kids splash around in puddles and get absolutely manky when a lady came over and spoke to me, and her kid looked as grotty as mine did. And we just kind of connected. And we spoke a lot about what we felt was really important in early childhood. And we immediately connected. I mean, of course, I have the advantage that I speak Japanese. But even if I weren't fluent in Japanese, I still think we would have made a connection because we had this really strong goal, which was raising our kids. We both felt very strongly about how we wanted our children to be raised when they were young. So I connected with her, and then we would meet up maybe 2 or 3 times a week at the park. And all we were doing was just letting our kids play, which seems like very, very strange if you don't have kids. But at that time, I don't know what it's like now. At that time, if you would take your kids to a park, there would be somebody saying, oh, don't let your kids take their shoes off. Don't let them climb up the tree. It's dangerous. Don't let them splash in the puddle. They're going to get dirty. And that's fine for, other people. But I kind of wanted my kid to experience those kind of things and learn her boundaries. So we found this park that absolutely nobody went to. I mean, thinking like now I'm a little bit more conservative, and it was probably really, really dangerous. I'm surprised that nobody broke their neck because it was built about 30 years ago. Anyway, we'd meet there and we would let our kids play. And then gradually people would kind of, I don't know how they heard about us, but they would be there at the same day. And then eventually we had about 15 parents. They were mostly mums, but there were a few dads there. And we would meet 4 times a week. And we would, we'd each bring a dish. So we'd each bring a dish and we'd all share the food at lunchtime. And we would talk about things that were bothering us, things that worried us about our kids and everything, and what we wanted to do and how we wanted our kids to grow up. And I remember once we were talking about children's TV shows. And my friend, we'll call her Eiko-chan. So Eiko-chan said, hey, hi, did you remember that TV show we used to watch when we were kids? Like, what was that character? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't grow up, in Japan. I'm like, I said, oh yeah, I always forget like you're a foreigner. And then that was it. That was like the moment for me. I was like, this is what I wanted, just to be just to be a mom, not like a English foreigner, just to be somebody who had the same values, the same goal, the same principles as you, as a Japanese person, who just happened to be English. So that community for me, looking back now, I mean, at the time I didn't really think about it, but looking back, that was an incredibly huge part of my life. And I think it made me really value that connection with other people, not only because I was accepted and I was trusted, but just hearing the opinion and the advice of other people who I trusted. That wasn't really something that I'd ever wanted before. I was quite egotistical and self-righteous and pretty sure that what I thought and what I did was right. But connecting with other people in that way, it really, really opened up my perspective. So that was my first community. And then more recently, when I moved in-house, so when I went from being freelance to being in-house, I went from working on my own and being in total control of my translations to working in a team with 2 other people. And if you're a translator or if you're in any kind of job where you're used to working on your own, it's very, very hard to do that because obviously with something like translation, it can really depend on the person. Everybody has their own style. There is definitely a wrong answer, but there are lots of right answers. And what I think is right might not necessarily be the same as what somebody else thinks is right. And after translating for maybe 15 years, going in and having my work corrected and questioned was an incredibly frustrating and humbling experience, which I absolutely hated for the first 6 months. But then maybe I grew, I don't know, I started to appreciate it. I started to see that having somebody question my work and edit it, firstly, it showed that they cared. I mean, they wanted to make it better, but obviously I learned from it as well. I was growing. I was seeing how my work could be better. And when I left there in 2020, I really missed that. I missed having somebody to look at my work, or when I had a question, or when I wasn't really sure if I was going in the right direction, or even if I just wanted to, complain about something professional. I didn't have that community anymore. So I made my own. I looked around to see if there were any Japanese to English translator communities, and there was 1 or 2, but I found the atmosphere there to not really be the type of positive, encouraging atmosphere I was looking for. It was more, it was just a different vibe. So in December 2020, I put a group on Facebook. It's still there. So if you're a Japanese to English or English to Japanese translator, you can join. It's called the JE Translator Hub. And it started off with about 10 people. And it's just a place where you can go there and you can say, look, I know this is a really stupid question, but how do you normally translate this word? Or a client has offered me this rate. Do you think that's a reasonable rate? And just questions which you wouldn't really want to put out on a public forum. And you could only really ask if you have the trust and the respect of the people in the group. And now the group has grown to, I think, about 150 people. And it's amazing. I just love it. I think it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about community today, because having that group it's not only helped me. I mean, I have grown so much since that group was formed. I feel far more confident about the rates that I'm charging and the work that I'm doing. It's helped me practically in that people have told me where I can go and get clients and how I can market myself more. But more than that, people from the group have told me how it's helped them. So it's given them the confidence to reassess their rates or look at what they're doing or explore different avenues in their work. So, the community that I built for me is actually helping other people. So, which for me is like really great. So yeah, I've been talking for a long time now, so I'm gonna stop for a bit.
Thank you for sharing that. I love the story about connecting with the other parents at that park, and different people take different approaches to Japan, and connecting with people. I think for some people it's easier than others, and as you said, the language helps. But I know people who can't speak any Japanese who have lots of friends, just because they figure out a way around the barrier and they do it anyway. But it's very touching when I see fellow non-Japanese, in a sense, kind of act as ambassadors, and you make the human connection, and it reaffirms our common humanity without necessarily putting that into words, right? So, hats off to you. I'm so glad to hear other people actually enjoyed the experience in Japan and connected with local folks. So, thank you for that.
Yes, I wanted to say that it's very important to have your own community. And of course, oftentimes it happens that we have a community as parents, we have a community as professionals, but all of these communities are important to provide support. And as you said, Heidi, to give you hints and tips and, just keep you going as well. But what resonated with me was, of course, everything you said is so beautiful. But one part, when you were talking about, feeling as a member of the community of mothers here, the Japanese mothers, I have a very similar experience of when my daughter was still young. She had just been born, and I remember going to the ward which we were living in. There was a community center which was actually furnished for mothers with young children, so that we could go there and talk and just exchange information and so on. And it felt very good to be part of that circle. And also at that time, I was reading a lot about raising children. And I was also part of an online community of Western mothers. And then it was so striking to me that at some point I felt much closer to the mothers here in Japan than the mothers online. And that was not because of the physical or non-physical interaction. It was because of the beliefs, and it was because of the principles which we believed in, and we believed that would help us raise children who had richer experiences as children, richer experiences growing up. So to me, at that point, I thought that the Japanese approach, even though, of course, I'm not trying to generalize here, but here in Japan, a lot more mothers have a very pragmatic approach, which helps their kids experience a lot, actually. And I have seen so many kids later, too, when I take my daughter to the park. I see them, getting dirty and, actually, as you said, climbing trees and running around and doing things which normally in the Western world would be considered kind of bad behavior. So it's interesting how we get to belong and share our values, even though we don't speak the same language originally, or we don't come from the same cultural background. So thank you for making that point.
So Maya, just a comment, that so-called bad behavior you just mentioned, that was normal in my generation. So that's what we did, So yeah. And Heidi, the other thing is, kids are almost magical in connecting us, because I kind of had a similar experience when I moved to Hawaii, 17 years ago. And I ended up making my closest friends through my son, who was in the school system, who made local friends. I met their parents. And I mean, it was like the kids have this magical way of connecting us. And I don't know, maybe it's just me. The other thing that strikes me about Japan, now that I'm back after 30 years in the U.S., I feel like Japan is really kid friendly. It's okay to bring your kids a lot of places, and other people will indulge you and even play with your kids sometimes. And when I was in the U.S., my mother often was like, "Why don't you and Kurumi go out and have a romantic dinner and leave the kids home?" Because we took our kids everywhere. We just wanted to be around them, right? And I saw even a gap in that thinking, and I guess maybe in that sense I was influenced by the Japanese. But and then the other point about community that you made was, people. I think your definition was people connected by like a common goal, a group of people, right, or a common interest, right? And for me, and not just me, like I had a lot of other, in my case, it was American friends, ex-military, most of them, who just instantly fell in love with Japan and connected. And they were part of a larger group of mostly Japanese. And our common thing was music, and there were a lot of musicians. They were kind of free spirits, and it was fun. So for me, I feel like looking back now, very blessed that I just bumbled my way into that situation, because it could have been a lot different if I had not met the group of people, the community that I met. And by the way, 43 years later, they're all still my good friends, So anyway, just a couple comments on my point. But thank you. It was really, you covered a lot of ground. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I do agree that, especially if, like me, which you're a natural introvert, which I say to people, but they don't believe me, but it is actually true. Having children is one way to kind of give you that connection that you might be reluctant to take on your own. But I also think that there are, other ways. So, for example, a job is also another way to connect with a community. And I found, like I said, with the JE Translator Hub, that's been one community for me that has been really, really important these last 2 years. But through that, I connected with a bigger community of freelancers, both Japanese and overseas. And that has also kind of helped me to improve not just my job, but just to feel more confident about reaching out to people around me. So because I've gotten something from the connection and it's been, really nice and really easy, I've been a lot more forward in connecting with Japanese translators, which previously I hadn't really done because I think there's some in the audience, but because I guess I thought there wasn't really much point in connecting with an English to Japanese translator, because what we were doing was totally different and our clients were different and our issues were different as well. But through the translator community on Facebook, I realized that that's not true. And I'm sure as other people are thinking, like, why would you even think that? Because just because the language pair is different, it doesn't mean that our concerns are different or the things that we're struggling with are different. And connecting with the English to Japanese translator community has been huge for me. Professionally, I've had a lot of leads from Japanese translators, which I would never have had before. And also, I've learned so much on the admin side, like, taxes and things like that. So while I do think that children are one huge step into community in Japan, I think like your job is one thing. And also, I mentioned to Maya when we were discussing this topic that being a working mother is another, I think, major community in Japan. Because, as Maya said, I do think that still, in general, Japanese mothers tend to be more hands-on, whether that's because they want to be or whether that's expected of them. Japanese mothers do tend to try to, make all of their food from scratch and do all of the housework and hold down a full-time job and make sure their kids are, getting balanced education and fun and all of that. They're doing that all on their own. So if you are also a working mom in Japan, whether you are Japanese or, English like I am, once you connect with that community, then you have that for life. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are non-working moms in Japan, and I have friends who are working moms in Japan, and that community is a really, really powerful community as well. So yeah, so I guess what I want to say is that I think like you said, Tim, music or children, your job. There are so many ways to connect with people in Japan that just saying Japanese people are different and our cultures are different. I think it's true, but it's not the whole story.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we all share the same values. We want our kids to be healthy, to be happy. We want to have a peace, well, let's say, a safe life. And at the end of the day, those are the basic values which we all share, regardless of the cultural background or, let's say, or our upbringing.
Yeah, and I was just going to say the essence of what I've done in my career, cross-cultural management and communication, is finding those common points, and also talking about the differences. But those common points are what anchor people and glue them together, bring them together, right? Identifying them. So, very good point. And Yuka, thank you for coming on stage.
Hi, thank you for bringing me up to the stage. Hi, Heidi. Thank you for the great the conversation here. Let me have one quick comment, and then I have a question, which can be very weird. So I give you a warning. So my quick comment, I'm just in your website, Kotonoha Bloom, and then I was very impressed. Under the services, I think you are dividing, your service, and for those like the request, which probably not gonna suit your services. Looks like you are sending this customer to a different service. Am I right on this? And then if that's the case, I'm very impressed.
Yes, that's right. If they want translation, I think they're on my website. It says I do this, this, and this. But if you want this, this, and this, I'm not the right person for the job. So please direct them to JAT, the Japan Association of Translators. Yes, that's right.
Okay, I'm impressed. I would hold on. I will hog on every business I could get. But anyway, okay, that's that. And then I have a question. And then I'm sorry. Somehow, it's probably on my end, but you were kind of speaking very softly, and especially initially. So you said you belong to communities for the parents, and then also like a professional organization, right? And then do you belong to, or are you a member of community or groups which are all from the people from your native country?
No, I am a member of, like, say, a Facebook group which has people who are from UK, where I'm from. And I think it's a mothers group, but I'm not really active there. Like, when I came to Japan in '98, the internet wasn't a thing. So I spent maybe the first 10 years of my life not really thinking about the UK or anything to do with the UK, because it was pretty much impossible to connect with people in Japan or to even, watch UK TV shows. So I just pretty much forgot about it. And then by the time those kind of connections were feasible, I'd just gotten over it. It wasn't that I avoid people from England. I have some friends who are from UK. It was simply that I didn't feel the need to seek out people from the country that I was from. And the reason for that is that I came to Japan when I was 20. And before that, I was from the UK, but I moved around quite a lot. I lived in Germany on and off for about 6 years. And I moved within the UK maybe every 2 or 3 years. So I'm not really sure how British I am in that I would want to connect with random people just because they're from England, Like, I want to connect. I have friends who are from UK, and I'm friends with them because of who they are, not because they're from the UK. And it's the same with my friends in Japan, or, if they're Australian or American or, French or whatever. It's not because of where they're from. So, no, I don't really have a group of, immigrant friends per se.
Okay. Okay. Great. I'm kind of jealous of you because I, the reason that I asked that question is, I have like a very distinct, the different the community that I belong to. Like one, like professional group, and then one is like my in-laws, and then I have like the group of friends who are like all from U.S. Oh, I live in the U.S. And then I have a big group, the Japanese who are from Japan. So like a first generation, like myself, and then I have to play very different roles when I'm talking to all these different groups. And especially when I'm talking to my Japanese friends, sometimes, like I love Japan, and I think I'm 100% Japanese. I consider myself a Japanese, but sometimes I feel like, I don't understand why, like a Japanese, especially the government doing this and that. And I have to be very careful when I criticize, things Japanese to Japanese friends. And people think that, Yuka lives in the U.S. for a long time, and she, who does she think she is? It's kind of, that's why I thought I wanted to ask you that how sort of you can play different roles. But okay, but if you don't have friends from UK, then
yeah, I think that I am probably well, not now. I've stopped doing it, but a few years ago, I was definitely a slightly different personality in English to what I am in Japanese. But I think that there are various different types of immigrants in Japan. So people who have made a life here, even though they weren't born here. And some of them have a lot of positive energy there, even though they know they don't fit in, and it's not really their country, or maybe they didn't even choose to come here. They're still making the best of it. Whereas there are others who are quite negative, and they just want to criticize Japan, and they don't like it here, and everything about their own country is better. And I don't really need that. So, and I find that groups which collect people from who are like non-Japanese, there tends to be a heavy mix of both. Like some people are negative and some people are positive. So yeah, I just don't really need that. I don't think it's helpful, and I don't really see the point in it. So you could say I've maybe avoided finding those groups of people who just collect non-Japanese members. Although I am a member of some, and there are some really great ones in Japan. It's not really something that I've ever needed. But anyway, sorry, Luke, I guess you came up to the stage to say something.
Thanks very much. Please excuse the sexy husky voice. I have a cold at the moment. This is me. It's not computer generated or anything like that. No, really great topic. And having lived here for 25 years, I've gone in and out of communities, I suppose, over that time. And I think that the best way, in a nutshell, I suppose, for anyone listening, and you might agree, that I think taking an interest in Japanese culture, even though your language skills might not be, it could be even zero, right? I've always been able to find a community of some sort because I just follow my interest, whether it be when I first came here, I was really into judo. I really wanted to get my black belt. So I had a really strong judo community. And then I got injuries, and my Olympic dream fell away. And then so you sort of jump to another community, and I got into running, and then you have a running community, and which I still do today. Till today, but thanks to COVID, that's no longer happening. So I think it's a challenge. Maybe as a male representative, taking my kids to the park. Yeah, one way to get your kid dirty and let her socialize, and which is really awesome. But entering that mother's group, no way, it's not going to happen. Like you can sort of chit chat, but you don't get very deep. And it's kind of interesting because even if the father's there, it's very difficult to connect, because I think males and females, of course, as everyone knows, connects in different ways. Now, if I'm talking about sport or if I'm talking about work, then suddenly the conversation opens up, because I think guys kind of socialize about different topics. And another example I have of trying to find that community, we just moved into a new area, didn't know anyone. And then within a month, I got asked, my wife said, "Oh, look, they're looking for strong people that can carry a local portable shrine. It's a shrine that travels around every 4 years for the whole day to wish good luck to each house. And they're incredibly heavy, and they needed some strong guys. And lucky I've got some muscles. And yeah, it just opened doors. Like people were really appreciative of the effort that you went to involve in their culture. It's not part of mine, but just to sort of show your appreciation. And they were like, "Oh, thanks very much for bringing good luck to our house." And even to this day, they still mention that time, even though it's like 3 years ago. Yeah, I think just taking an interest in Japanese culture will open a lot of doors.
Yes, I cannot agree more about that. And Heidi, I really see your point of wanting to belong to a community with positively minded people, rather than people who criticize without much thought. Let's say so. Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, we humans are social animals, and we all look for communities to belong to. And yes, we jump from one community to another. Look, as you said. So thankfully, there are a lot of people who are open to accepting new members to the groups and circles and communities they belong to. So it helps a lot. Look, sorry, please go ahead.
I just something there quickly that I really liked of Heidi's, and it's been something in the back of my back of my brain recently, because I've joined a new company, I've joined a new industry, of creating your own community. Like with COVID, I'm working from home now. I don't have the social interaction of my team or my colleagues at work. Yeah, and even just with friends in general. Like you stay in touch online, but it's yeah, it's just not the same. And I really like Heidi's idea of, okay, well, I'll start my own community, like and then involve other people and see what happens. And with 100 people that have similar interests, can share different things. That's pretty awesome, I thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I would recommend everybody to do it. I think it's a great way to learn and to share what you've learned. And there are a few people in the audience, in the group. So yeah, hopefully they feel the same.
Yeah, it's funny, the whole thing about COVID. Of course, it's been very stressful for a lot of people, and I've mentioned this before, but because of COVID, I ended up getting pretty close with Maya. I didn't know Maya that well, other than being a LinkedIn connection, and Sarai Pala, she's in Germany now, but South African doctor turned translator, from Japanese to English and Japanese to German, or I think that's what she does. And I had met Richard Berger, but I also have done a lot of Zooms with him. So in a weird sense, I had some positive things come out of COVID in terms of building community online. And I know, Maya, just having this room every week, that's part of what you're doing. You're looking for like-minded people who are interesting to come and join in these discussions on a weekly basis. So I think, I've expanded my community, one of the communities that I'm involved in. But to the point about, I believe we all adjust, either consciously or unconsciously, when we're dealing with different cultures. And I think when I first came here, I kind of went native. I was mostly around Japanese people for a really long time. And I think I overcompensated, became almost too Japanese. And I realized it when I went back to my own country for 30 years and saw how people reacted to me. And I'm like, oh, I'm really different than everyone. And it helped me kind of rebalance myself to try to move toward some kind of hybrid that's, authentically me. And I feel like it's been, as I grow older, the process has been, how can I be authentic? And yet I still adjust, And so when I deal with my Japanese friends, my goal is always to adjust enough to make the connections and to nurture those connections, but also be authentic to myself. And I call it the cross-cultural sweet spot. And I think it's a moving target, but that's kind of how I look at it. But I think we all adjust unconsciously. Anybody agree, disagree?
I agree. Heidi, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I mean, as I was listening to you, I was nodding ferociously. I did exactly the same thing. I mean, you and I, Tim, we went to the same university, so we possibly had a similar start. I didn't really have any contact with people who were not Japanese. And for the first 10, 15 years, I would say I was definitely adjusting myself consciously or self-consciously to become more Japanese. Maybe it was because I thought if I didn't do that, I wouldn't fit in, or maybe it's just my personality. But there was a lot of adjustment there. Whereas now I feel that, like you said, I've got this sweet spot where I'm not anything really. I don't really associate with any nationality. I'm sure other people who talk to me might say you're definitely British or whatever. But I just am who I am. And if I'm speaking to somebody who's from Japan, I'm going to communicate them in a different way, just because it's a different way of communicating this society. And similarly, if I'm talking to somebody who's not from Japan, I would adjust for that too. So yeah, adjusting is a really important part of not just living in. It's just because we live in a multicultural. Like we are usually communicating with people from two different cultures. So maybe somebody from Western culture and somebody from Japanese culture, that we're aware of this adjustment, and it's probably a little bit more extreme. But in any kind of communication, there's always adjustment, right? Like Luke said, men generally communicate in a different way to women. So there's an adjustment there. And then even if you are from the same country, the way you've been raised is going to affect the way you communicate. It's just that when you're in Japan, there's the language, there's the culture that makes that adjustment seem maybe a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult, but it's just a different type of adjustment, I think.
Yeah, even within your own culture, when I was consulting, I didn't talk with the people on the factory floor the same way I talked to folks in the boardroom, but it was kind of an adjustment that was unconscious. It was just completely different. So yeah, so even within subcultures, we do it.
Yeah. So, something though, you really have to talk amongst the people of your country. I'm just saying that because, especially the topic on Japanese food, I just have to talk to Japanese because my American friends just don't get it. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's so funny. That's exactly how my wife is. She's just obsessed with food. Very Japanese.
Yeah, I mean, I think is that a Japanese thing? I mean, we are very serious about food,
Yes, I agree. That's hilarious that you made that comment.
Yeah, but I also find it interesting that, of course, back home in Bulgaria, we don't talk so much about food, but we really appreciate a well-cooked dish, and a delicious meal. So that's something interesting. It is going to take me on a tangent now, but I belong to a group on Facebook where people share jokes, about different things Bulgarian. And so a lot of the jokes are about food there. And that's because we make jokes because we love eating. And we love delicious food. We love, everything which is made there and our cuisine and so on. And just as you say, no matter how much I try to explain those jokes to somebody who does not belong or who was not born Bulgarian, nobody can understand them. It's just between me and my fellow country people, So I can relate to what you just said about that. And of course, we try to adjust, but there are certain points which are really difficult to adjust to. And as long as we understand that, so it's okay, I believe.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. Because no matter how many times I try to explain how good natto is to my husband, he just say, "Ooh, stinky beans." So I've given up. Yeah.
Yes. But it's funny that if I try to explain how tasty natto is, because now I appreciate the taste of natto and I like it. But if I try to explain it to somebody back in Bulgaria, everybody will be exactly like your husband. "Oh, stinky beans." So who's going to eat them? No way. So it's funny how things go.
Here's a confession. I am an amanojaku, and I'm not crazy about natto. I don't hate it. But when Japanese say, "Oh, taberanai desho, kirai desho," that's like I eat it just to spite them, and I pretend I enjoy it, even though I don't love it or hate it. But I don't like being pigeonholed. So that's the amanojaku in me.
That's funny. Thanks. I'm sorry that I'm taking the topic of this room to I'm sorry.
I think that you reminded me of the other community that we're kind of getting to the end of the room now, but people in Bulgaria who say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you can eat natto," and then Japanese people who say, "You probably don't like natto because you're from England." I don't like natto, but it's not because I'm from England. It's just because I don't like it. Like my sister-in-law who's from Japan doesn't like it. But that kind of way of thinking is just very different to who I am. And so I tend to connect more with people who are a little bit more global-minded. So don't really make assumptions about things that they don't have a lot of information on. And if someone says to me, "Oh, you don't like natto because you probably don't like natto because you are English," it doesn't bother me. It used to bother me, I think, a couple of years ago. But now I just think, okay, so this person has lived their whole life in Japan. They don't really have a lot of information about the world. They're just basing it on an assumption that only Japanese could possibly like natto. And exactly the same thing happens in UK. I mean, there are things about UK culture and UK humor that only people in the UK believe that is unique to them. I mean, I think British people are very arrogant about their culture, and they think that a lot of things are just totally unique to them. Whereas I don't really think that, and I think that's why I tend not to actively connect with those kind of, I don't really like using the word expat, but those kind of communities which are, people are coming together with, well, going back to the goal, people are coming together with the goal of celebrating their culture. If maybe it's a British culture or whatever. And for me, after being in Japan for 24 years, I don't even know like what people in UK would do or say or, find funny. So UK, you were talking about, Japanese people like really like talking about food, and I think that's really true. But if you said to me, like, what do English people like to do? Like, what do English people like to talk about? I don't really feel that I'm in a position to talk about it, having lived in Japan for so long. So whereas I think there are definitely aspects of a person which are based on the culture that they're raised on, and to find some kind of understanding, you really need to talk to the people who came from your culture. So there are things that only a British person would understand, I think, like maybe like sarcasm and stuff. I get that from my family, like talking to my brother or talking to my parents or my aunt and uncle. That's enough for me. People who I know, I don't feel like I need to go out and find some random British person to kind of reminisce or connect and talk about how English people do this or English people do that. But I can see how that's important for a lot of people, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think it's just not part of my personality, and it's not, who I am.
Yeah, I personally, I don't think about, I want to find fellow Americans, maybe just because I've lived in a lot of places as well. But I am attracted as friends to foreigners, non-Japanese, who understand Japan, who lived here, who love Japan, because the analogy I use is, it's kind of a rare club even now where I feel like we're sitting on a fence between two cultures. We can look both ways and understand both the pluses and the minuses. And again, to go back to the positive theme, I tend to want to associate with people who believe Japan has a lot more positives than negatives, but still have a balanced view. So I guess that's the tribe I seek out, and I believe Maya's part of that, and I feel it from you, Heidi, and of course Yuka and many other people that we connected with. So I think I'm similar in that sense.
Yeah, I think you are. From my observation, even though it has been just for a year now, but however, and I'm very grateful for meeting all the people, Heidi and Luke and Yuka, you team, and a lot of the people who are listening at the moment in the audience. So I encourage you indeed to reach out to one another. Of course, you can always contact us, reach out to us as well, so that we can maintain a community which is supportive and helps everybody who belongs to the community to go forward. Well, but this is the most I can say, and I really mean it. I believe that a lot of, maybe not a lot of the people, but at least some of the people in the room have already felt that there is indeed a supportive spirit here, and so I encourage you to use it, and of course to be part of it. With this, it's just 1 minute past 9 o'clock, but this is the time when we usually wrap up the room and say goodbye, because it's Thursday morning. It's a working day here in Japan, and we don't want to keep you online for too long. Heidi, I hope that we can continue this conversation even when you go back to Britain. So if you have anything to say in closing, please do.
Yes, thank you for having me on the show. And as Maya mentioned, I'm actually moving back to the UK in April. So I might be like Yuka. I might be seeking out Japanese people to talk about food with when I get back there. I can totally see myself doing that, and then I'll come on the show and say, okay, just forget everything I said last time. I just wanted to let people know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have been here a long time, but maybe there are some newbies to Japan, that it is possible to have like genuine friendships with people in Japan, whether they're Japanese or not Japanese, as long as you just need to find the people who have a similar a goal or a similar inspiration as you, and just ignore the fact that maybe they approach it differently, or maybe their culture makes them think about it differently, and just get beyond that. And then you can have, a genuine connection. And from that, you can make a community. And if there's nobody there, just make your own community and pass out flyers and build it. They will come. It's like the philosophy. So yes, thank you. I've learned a lot on this show too. And if any of you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Heidi. That was a great talk, and we had a lot of people come. So obviously the topic was attractive to a lot of people. So thank you again for the great presentation.
Thank you. Well, to everybody, have a great day, a successful day, and we're looking forward to having you again here next Thursday. Heidi, we are very much looking forward to having you here again. Thank you, and you too, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and staying with us today. We will be on air next week on Thursday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, you can follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, we're looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you.